In the restroom at a charity gala, I heard my husband say it himself. He was going to redefine my pregnancy as psychological false pregnancy. He falsified my psychological evaluation, frowned my accounts, arranged for doctors to deny the existence of the baby, and even forced me, through pain, to sign away my parental rights in the delivery room. So I tore up the agreement, saved the recording, and fought back using the rules he knew best. He wanted me to disappear, so I made his company collapse, his mistress go to prison, and his lies exposed before millions of viewers. The lights in the ballroom were blinding. I lifted my gown and walked into the restroom. Just as I was about to touch up my lipstick, I heard a familiar voice. "Jonathan, my husband." "Don't worry." His voice came from the innermost stall, carrying a tenderness I had never heard before. "She's just a suitable wife shell." My fingers frowned around the lipstick tube. Another woman laughed softly. It was Lydia, Jonathan's so-called confidant. "But you still have to give her a child, don't you? The family's been pushing hard. It's already been handled." Jonathan replied calmly, as if discussing the weather. "The prenup includes a fertility liability clause, and I contacted her doctors and had her medical notes revised. If she claims she's pregnant, it'll be diagnosed as stress-induced pseudocyesis." My breath stopped. The stall door opened. I quickly slipped into the stall beside it. Through the narrow gap, I saw Jonathan wrap an arm around Lydia's waist and lower his head to kiss her forehead. "When the time is right," he said softly, "we'll go public." They left. I stood in that stall for a long time, my hand drifting to my abdomen. My period was 2 weeks late. Yesterday, I quietly bought a pregnancy test. 2 red lines. I just hadn't figured out how to tell him yet. Now I understood. He had planned everything. Already planned to make me medically unfit for pregnancy. The gala continued. When I returned to the table, Jonathan was elegantly cutting his steak. He looked up and smiled, at method perfect. Gentle smile now looked like a finely crafted mask. "Darling, you don't look well," he said, reaching out to touch my forehead. I dodged his hand. Lydia Saturday on his other side, wearing the red dress I'd admired last month but never bought. She raised her winning glass. "Evelyn, you're very quiet tonight. Are you feeling unwell?" Everyone at the table turned to look at me. "Actually," Lydia said sweetly, her voice full of concern, "I heard you've been under a lot of stress lately. If you need any help, just say so." After all, she paused, hesitating just enough. Fertility issues can really affect a woman's mental health. "I completely understand." My mother-in-law frowned. "Fertility issues." Jonathan sighed and took my hand. He felt how cold his fingers were. "Mom, let's talk about this privately. Evelyn does have some issues." "What kind of issues?" my father-in-law asked, setting down his knife and fork. "The doctor says she may not be well suited for pregnancy," Jonathan said regretfully. "Her psychological evaluation shows severe anxiety, so we signed an agreement if she experiences false pregnancy symptoms due to stress." "I'm not having a false pregnancy," I said. My voice was calmer than I expected. Jonathan's eyes flickered for a split second, then softened again with pity. "Darling, didn't we agree we'd talk about this once? You were feeling better." "I'm pregnant," I said clearly. Silence. Then Lydia let out a faint, almost inaudible sigh, as if mourning for me. Jonathan's expression frowned for a second before returning to concern. "Evelyn, your doctor told me just last week that your stress levels are extremely high and may be causing psychosomatic symptoms." "Which doctor?" I asked. "Your psychiatrist and Dr. Chen from obstetrics," he replied smoothly. "I spoke with both of them. They recommend observation for now." I looked at him and suddenly understood. This was a web that had been woven over a long time, and I had been standing at its center all along, completely unaware. The dinner continued under an eerie atmosphere. Jonathan took care of me attentively, serving me food, explaining to everyone that my wife's emotions have been a bit unstable lately. Everyone looked at him with sympathy and at me with concern. Halfway through the meal, Jonathan left the table to take a phone call. I stood up and said I was going to get my coat. Instead, I turned toward the backstage area. There was a temporary office set up for the event. As one of the hosts, Jonathan had a key. The office door was ajar. I pressed myself against the wall and saw Jonathan standing with his back to the door, in front of a shredder. He was holding a piece of paper. I recognized it immediately. That morning, before leaving the house, I had pulled it from my courier envelope, glanced at it, and hidden it in my desk drawer. My pregnancy test report. From a clinic I had gone to myself, not a doctor he had arranged. How did he find it? Then I remembered after I left the house, he said he needed to go back for a document he'd forgotten. So that was it. The shredder bust. The paper that proved a small life existed inside me turned into thin strips and fell into the waste bin. Jonathan brushed his hands together, as if dusting them off. When he turned around, I quickly hid behind a pillar. His footsteps faded away steady and hurried. I walked up to the shredder and crouched down. The paper fragments were beyond recognition. I placed my hand on my abdomen. It was still flat. Nothing had changed on the outside, but I knew there was a heartbeat inside, and my husband had just destroyed the evidence of its existence. The next morning at breakfast, Jonathan slid a plate of eggs toward me. "You were exhausted last night," he said gently. "Stay home and rest today. I've canceled all your appointments for you." I picked up my fork, then put it down. "Why did you contact my doctors?" I asked. Jonathan paused, then continued spreading butter. "Because I was worried about you. You contacted them before I ever told you I might be pregnant," I said softly. "You already knew, didn't you?" He set down his knife and sighed. "Evelyn, let's not do this. You know you've been emotionally unstable lately. The doctors say it was psychological evaluation." I interrupted. "I want to see the file." His gaze turned cold. "You don't trust me. I want to see the file." He stood up and retrieved a document from the safe in his study. It bore the letterhead of a professional institution, a doctor's signature, and a date from 3 months ago when I was preparing for this very charity gala. Assessment result: anxiety disorder, tendency toward somatization, recommendation: avoid major life changes. "This is fake," I said. Jonathan smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Darling, how could you say that? This was issued by a certified institution. If you don't believe it, we can schedule another evaluation." He paused, then added gently, "I'll go with you." Just then, the doorbell rang. Lydia stood at the door holding a bouquet of flowers. "I heard Evelyn isn't feeling well, so I came to check on her." She walked in naturally and placed the flowers into a vase. "Jonathan, don't push yourself too hard either. I've already taken care of things on the company side." The two of them stood together like a flawless team, and there I was in pajamas, hair unkempt like the wrong element ruining the picture. "Actually," Lydia turned to me, her eyes full of sympathy, "if you feel like you're not in a good state, I can temporarily help manage things at home. You and Jonathan both need some space." "What kind of space?" I asked. "Space to adjust," she said gently. "After all, if there really is a child, you'd want to give the baby a stable environment, wouldn't you?" I looked at her, then at Jonathan. Then I did something I had never done before. I picked up the psychological evaluation and, slowly and deliberately, tore it in half, then into quarters, then into eighths. The scraps of paper drifted down onto the polished floor like snow. "I will go to the hospital myself," I said clearly, "for an independent prenatal exam. I don't need doctors you arrange, and I don't need your company." Jonathan's expression finally changed. "Evelyn, don't get upset," Lydia cried out. "I'm very calm," I said. "This is the last time I'll explain it. I'm pregnant. The child is yours. I don't have a psychological disorder. If you continue this, I will sue you for psychological abuse and medical fraud." I turned and went upstairs. At the bend in the staircase, I heard Jonathan's voice lowered, slipping into my ears like a snake. "You won't get out of this marriage, Evelyn. Don't believe me? Try." 3 days later, I discovered my credit cards had been frozen. A notice from the bank informed me that my accounts had been converted into family expense or restricted accounts. Any withdrawal or transfer over $5,000 required joint spousal authorization. I called the insurance company. They informed me politely, "Your health insurance was terminated last week due to inaccurate information disclosure." The private hospital I had booked called as well. "We're very sorry. Your scheduled doctor has been reassigned. We've arranged another specialist for Youter Chen." Dr. Chen again. Jonathan's doctor. I hung up and Saturday on the couch, my fingers ice cold. My phone rang. It was Lydia. "Evelyn, I've helped you schedule a lawyer," she said, her voice full of concern. "Jonathan is worried you can't handle all this on your own. If you're willing, you can sign a temporary guardianship authorization, so I can help you as a friend with medical and legal matters." "I don't need it," I said. "Don't be stubborn," she sighed. "You can't even use your bank accounts right now." How are you going to pay for prenatal care? How will you hire a lawyer? I know you want to be independent, but be realistic, you're pregnant. You need help. Your help, I asked. And then one day I'm diagnosed as completely incapacitated, with you acting as my legal guardian? There was silence on the other end for a few seconds, then Lydia laughed softly. The sound was light and cold. You're overthinking it. I just want to help. That evening, Jonathan came home. He took off his coat, loosened his tie, just like always. Then he walked over and sat across from me. We need to talk, he said. About what? About reality. His gaze fell on my abdomen, still flat. Even if you really are pregnant, this child isn't suitable to come into this world. Your condition, the state of our marriage, it wouldn't be fair to the child. So, I asked, so I'll arrange the best hospital and doctors, he said, as if negotiating a deal. Painless, safe. Afterward, you can go abroad to recover for a while. I'll cover all the expenses. When you come back, we can start over. And if I refuse, he leaned forward, lowering his voice, then your prenatal appointments will keep running into technical issues. Your accounts will remain restricted. Your friends will gradually receive updates about your emotional breakdowns. Your family, oh right, you hadn't been in touch with your mother for years, have you? I stared at him, and finally, he continued, due to mental instability, you'll be sent to a professional facility to recover. And once the child is born, as the only legally competent guardian, I'll receive full custody. He leaned back and smiled. You never had a choice, Evelyn. You just finally realize it now. That night, I lay awake until dawn. Moonlight spilled across the floor, cold and pale. I touched my abdomen. There was no fetal movement yet, but I could feel fetal life was growing, and my husband, my legal partner, was systematically dismantling every escape route I had. This wasn't an argument, it was a hunt. On the fourth day, I dialed a number I hadn't called in 10 years. It rang 3 times before someone answered. Hello, Mom, I said. It's me. A long silence followed. Then I heard a soft intake of breath. Evelyn, I need help, I said directly. Not money, information. My mother's surname is Shen. 30 years ago, the Shen family was one of the largest shipping dynasties along the southeastern coast. Later the family declined and splintered. My mother, a collateral branch daughter, married my father, a regular engineer, and almost completely cut ties with the family. That's the version Jonathan knows. What he doesn't know is that when I was 18, my grandfather met me privately. He said, a daughter of the Shen family should always have something of her own. He gave me a trust account, some dispersed equity holdings, and an identity and anonymity used to compete in financial modeling competitions. If one day you need it, my grandfather said, this identity can open some doors. Back then, I thought it was unnecessary. I married for love. I married Jonathan, a perfect man. Now I understand. Love can rot, and perfection is performance, and doors require keys. You want to activate that account? My mother asked. Not just that, I said. I need you to contact my uncle and look into Jonathan's company's recent shipping contracts, especially those tied to Southeast Asia routes. He's very careful. My mother said. He won't leave evidence. Then we check the fine print, I said. Insurance clauses, penalties, timing windows. I want every single detail. After hanging up, I opened my old laptop and logged into an email account I hadn't touched in years. There were 3 unread messages, all from a financial modeling platform. My anonymous id had participated in 3 international competitions over the past 5 years. My best result ranked in the global top 50. The platform offered an internal referral channel, directly connected to internship opportunities at several top-tier investment firms. I had never used it. No. I submitted an application. An hour later, I received a reply. They were very interested in my previous models and wanted to schedule an online assessment. The test prompt was simple. Predict the quarterly cash flow shortfall of a shipping company and propose a targeted intervention strategy. The target company was Donghai Shipping, the one Jonathan controlled. I smiled. This wasn't a coincidence. This was my mother's side of the family beginning to move. I got to work, using Jonathan's computer, the last device he would ever imagine I'd use to analyze his own company. The data was all public. Financial reports, route schedules, fuel price fluctuations, cargo disclosures, but when combined, the weakness became obvious. Donghai Shipping had overextended itself on new Southeast Asian routes, posting massive security deposits. If those routes ran into trouble, the deposits would be forfeited and cash flow would collapse. And trouble would come if I knew exactly where to apply a gentle push. That evening, Lydia came again. She brought a temporary guardianship authorization, designed to look like a compassionate support agreement. Just sign it, she coaxed softly. Then I can accompany you to prenatal appointments. Jonathan says he regrets everything and wants to make it up to you, but he needs you to show you're willing to cooperate with treatment first. I watched her performance, and I said, did Donghai Shipping fully insure its Philippines route? Her smile frowncy. What? It's typhoon season, I said calmly. If shipments are delayed, the deposits will be forfeited. And Jonathan has tied up most of the company's liquid capital in that new route, hasn't he? She stared at me. Her expression shifted from confusion to wariness. How do you know that? There are documents in Jonathan's study. I lied smoothly. I saw them. He even said that if this route succeeds, he'll buy you that hilltop villa when you two looked at together. Lydia's face changed. She didn't know I knew about the villa. Jonathan must have promised her something. He told you that? Her voice sharpened. He said it when he was drunk. I sighed lightly. He also said that once he gets guardianship over me, the divorce will be much easier and then he can be openly with you. Most of that was guesswork, but judging from her expression, I'd guessed right. She left in a hurry, forgetting even to take the authorization papers with her. I picked up my phone. It had been recording the entire time. Good. First piece of evidence. I wasn't out of cards, Evelyn. I just hadn't played them yet. The counterattack came quickly. A week later, Jonathan submitted a family environmental risk assessment to the board, along with a new medical report, claiming I had recently shown aggressive behavior and posed a potential danger to myself and others. That afternoon, financial tabloids began publishing headlines. Heiress wife loses emotional control, may impact corporate image. The photos showed me going alone to the grocery store 2 days earlier, loose clothing, a face mask shot in a way that made me look like a furtive patient sneaking around. The article quoted sources close to the family. She has long relied on medication and recently refused treatment due to delusions of false pregnancy. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Unknown numbers. When I answered, reporters fired questions. Is it true that you suffer from a mental illness? Is your marriage with Mr. Jonathan effectively over? Are you trying to use a child to trap the marriage? I turned my phone off. Then the doorbell rang. 2 uniformed officers stood outside and presented documents, based on a spousal request and medical recommendations. I was required to go to a designated institution for psychological evaluation and recovery. What if I refuse? I asked. Mr. Jonathan has already applied for temporary compulsory measures, the older one said calmly, to prevent harm to yourself or others. We strongly advise cooperation. At that moment, my mother's car sped into the driveway. She got out, wearing a sharply tailored suit dress, with a lawyer walking behind her. I am Miss Shen's mother. This is our attorney, she said firmly. The application procedure for these so-called compulsory measures is unlawful. We have already filed an objection with the court. Until a ruling is issued, you have no authority to take my daughter. The two exchanged a look and stepped back. After the door closed, my mother pulled me into her arms. It was the first time we had hugged since I became an adult. Don't be afraid, she whispered. The Shen family isn't dead yet. But Jonathan didn't stop. That night, he came home. Lydia followed behind him, this time without any pretense of gentleness, carrying the posture of a victor. Evelyn, let's talk one last time, Jonathan said, tossing a document onto the table. Give up the child, accept treatment, and in the divorce you'll receive a generous settlement. You keep your dignity. I looked at the agreement. If I sign this, you stop everything? I asked. Of course, he smiled. I'll arrange the best doctors so the process is easy. Afterward, you can go to Switzerland or anywhere you want and start over. Lydia added, this is the best option. For the child too. Do you really want your child to have a mother who's been legally declared incompetent? I picked up the agreement and flipped through it page by page. The compensation was enormous, more money than most people could earn in several lifetimes. But the traps were hidden in the clauses. If I ever relapsed, the money would be reclaimed. If I harassed Jonathan or his new family, I could be sued. It was a contract designed to silence me forever. I need time to think, I said. You have 1 day. Jonathan stood up. This time tomorrow, If you haven't signed, I'll initiate the compulsory process, and then you won't even get this money." They left. I sat there alone in the living room, staring at the night outside the window. My phone vibrated. An encrypted email from the investment firm I had just connected with. They had approved my test. They found my analysis report extremely impressive. More importantly, they were willing to offer me a temporary consulting contract and legal support. I replied to the email, attaching an encrypted link to the recording in my financial analysis of Donghai shipping. The subject line read preliminary evidence of commercial extortion and financial fraud. Sent. Then I opened another email account and wrote to my grandfather's old lawyer, activate the trust. I want to set up an independent account in the Cayman Islands to receive all future funds. After doing all this, it was nearly dawn. I watched the morning light inch across the floor, my hand resting on my abdomen. Child, wait just a little longer. Mom is paving the way, paving a path for us to leave safely. I didn't make it to full term. At 3 a.m., labor pains hit suddenly. I called the hospital, only to be told, your appointment has been canceled. Please contact your designated doctor. The designated doctor drive. Chen. I called my mother. 20 minutes later, she arrived and rushed me to a private obstetrics hospital, one in which the Shen family held shares. On the way, she held my hand. Hold on, the doctors are ready. What I hadn't anticipated was that Jonathan had been notified by the hospital listed as my spouse and emergency contact. The moment we reached the delivery room, he appeared, with a lawyer, under medical authorization. The lawyer said calmly, the spouse has the right to sign on behalf of the patient, in case of potential decision-making incapacity. I am not incapacitated, I said, sweat on my brow from pain. I'll sign myself. I'm afraid. The doctor hesitated, glancing at the documents Jonathan brought. There's a temporary court ruling, stating that during the guardianship dispute with Mr. Jonathan, major medical decisions require consent from both parties. My mother snapped. This is childbirth, not surgery. Let her sign, but Jonathan blocked her. He leaned over my bed, voice low so only I could hear. Sign the agreement to give up parental rights, and I'll let you deliver safely. Otherwise, the doctors can recommend a C-section or suggest waiting longer. The pain will last a long time. I stared at him. That face I once loved now looked like a devil. Contractions hit again, and I gritted my teeth. The child, after birth, I panted, needs the father's signature on the birth documents to be registered. I won't sign. He smiled. Then the child will be paternally unknown. And you, a mentally unstable single mother, want custody. Zero chance. My mother rushed forward to pull him away but was blocked by the lawyer. The pain intensified. I knew he was stalling, tormenting me, forcing my submission, but I refused. I grabbed my mother's hand. Recording on. She nodded and raised her phone screen showed it recording. I turned to Jonathan, raising my voice with all the strength I had. Jonathan Lee, I hereby notify you. You are refused any participation in medical decisions. If I or my child are harmed, this recording will serve as evidence, proving you deliberately endangered the life of a pregnant woman and her fetus. The doctor's expression changed. Jonathan's eyes darkened, but the recording kept going. Finally, the doctor relented. Let's proceed with the delivery. Legal matters can be addressed afterward. I was wheeled into the delivery room. My mother stayed by my side, holding my hand. Jonathan was kept outside. The labor lasted 8 hours. When the baby's cry finally rang out, tears streamed down my face. A daughter, tiny, red, wriggling in my arms. The nurse whispered, we need the father's signature on the birth documents to register the birth certificate. I'll sign. My mother said, as the grandmother, as the mother cannot fully exercise her rights, I can act as a witness. Our lawyer has prepared substitute documents. We were ready, but the real battle had only just begun. During postpartum observation, Lydia came. She stood at the door, not entering, just watching me and the baby from a distance. Congratulations, she said coldly, but you won't win. Without the father's acknowledgement, the child practically doesn't exist legally, and Jonathan is already applying to declare you incapable of full capacity once successful. The child will be sent to a welfare agency, and then legally adopted by him. I held my daughter gently, rocking her. Do you know why I insisted on giving birth? I asked. Lydia raised an eyebrow. Because she's my trump card, I said, looking at my daughter's small face. And you? You don't even have a real card. Lydia snorted and turned away. When the door closed, I kissed my daughter's forehead. I'm sorry you had to enter this world under such circumstances, but Mom promised this would be the only darkness you'd ever face. From now on, I would let the sunlight in. On the 7th day postpartum, I was discharged. I moved directly into a secure apartment arranged by my mother. Access required a key card. Visitors needed verification, and surveillance covered every corner. Jonathan called. Come home, his voice gentle. We can talk again. The child needs a father. The child needs the father's signature. I said, and you refused to sign. That was a special situation at the time. He sighed. Now I understand the child is innocent. We can co-parent. I'll give you visitation rights. I want full custody. I interrupted. Silence. Then he laughed. You think that's possible? It is, I said, if you don't want Donghai Shipping to go bankrupt next week. There was a pause on the other end. What do you mean? The cargo ship Donghai on the Philippines route was scheduled to arrive at Manila port tomorrow. I said calmly, but the berths at the port have already been fully booked at another shipping company, reserved all slots for the next 3 days. Donghai can only wait at anchor. Each day costs $50, 000 in demurrage, and your cargo includes perishables. If delayed more than 2 days, it will spoil and the consignee will demand compensation. How did you meanwhile? The insurance company covering that route just received an anonymous tip, alleging inflated cargo values for fraudulent claims. They've launched an investigation. Until it's completed, payouts are frozen. I heard his rapid breathing. Also, I continued, one of the major holders of your company bonds, maturing next month, just decided not to reinvest. The reason? They saw an analysis showing Donghai Shipping's cash flow won't last 3 months. You did this. His voice turned cold. I'm just a mentally unstable housewife. I said softly. How could I possibly influence shipping and finance? But I did it. Through that anonymous ad, I sent my analysis report to several investment firms. Through my mother's family connections, I contacted port agents. Through my grandfather's trust lawyer, I reached the insurance regulators. A month ago, I had nothing. No, I had the remaining network of the Shen family, a new identity in the financial world, and a detailed report on all of Jonathan's business vulnerabilities. And one more thing, a daughter I had to protect. What do you want? Jonathan asked. First, withdraw all claims and applications regarding my mental state. Issue a public clarification. Second, sign the birth documents to acknowledge the child as yours, while signing the agreement to relinquish custody. Third, divorce. I want 15% of the company's shares on equitable division of the marital gains. He nearly shouted. Impossible. Then watch Donghai Shipping go bankrupt. I said. Oh, and Lydia diverted $3 million under the company's name to pay the villa deposit. I have the financial records. Tell me, if I hand this over to the financial police, what happens to her? To you. The call ended. I wasn't in a hurry. Hunters can wait. The next day, the news broke. Donghai Shipping in crisis. Stock plummets. The day after, Lydia was suspended by the board and placed under internal investigation. On the 4th day, Jonathan's lawyer contacted mine. Negotiations began, but I was no longer the woman trembling in the bathroom. I was the hunter, and my shotgun was loaded. Jonathan's final tactic was moral manipulation. He held a small press conference, looking haggard on camera. I admit I made mistakes in the marriage. His eyes read, but I love my child. As a father, I beg my wife not to use the child as a weapon in a business struggle. The camera panned to my photos of me leaving with my daughter. Captioned, Heartless Mother Denies Father Visitation. Lydia was also interviewed, crying. I only wanted to help, but I was misunderstood. Now my career's ruined, but I don't blame Evelyn. After all, she's sick. They tried to paint me as a cold, insane woman using her child to take revenge on her husband. My lawyer advised silence. I refused. I registered a social media account under my real name, Evelyn Lee. I post my first status tomorrow at 10 a.m. Live stream. I will respond to everything. That night, Jonathan called frantically. I didn't answer. He texted, we can settle privately. Name your terms. I'll agree to anything. I replied, what I wanted. You already refused to give. Now, I want what you yourself created. The next day at 9:50 a.m., the live stream already had 100,000 viewers. At 10 a.m., I appeared on camera. No fatigue, No tear stains. I wore a simple blouse, hair neat, holding my daughter. She was asleep, peaceful. "Hello, I'm Evelyn," I said calmly. "Over the past few months, you've heard many stories about me. Today, I'll tell another version." I played the first recording the night of the charity gala, recorded outside the bathroom. Jonathan and Lydia's conversation was clear. "She's just a suitable wife shell, already handled. If she claims to be pregnant, it will be judged as a stress-induced false pregnancy." The chat exploded. I played the second recording. Lydia trying to coax me into signing a guardianship authorization. The third, Jonathan threatening me in the hospital. The fourth, Lydia admitting to misappropriating funds. Then I displayed document photos, the forced psychological evaluation, bank account restriction notices, health insurance termination letter, and Jonathan signed emails instructing doctors to alter my medical records. "These," I said, "are what a husband did to his pregnant wife. And today," I continued, "he cries on camera, claiming to love the child." I gently stroked my daughter's hair. "I don't need sympathy, I need justice." So I submitted all this evidence to the court, suing Jonathan Lee for psychological abuse, medical fraud, and document forgery, and Lydia Chen for embezzlement. As for the child, I looked into the camera, enunciating each word. "She will always have her mother's love and protection. A father's role is not earned through tears, or camera sit is earned through responsibility and respect." By the end of the live stream, viewers exceeded 1 million. An hour later, the court issued a temporary ruling. During the divorce proceedings, the child would remain in my custody, and Jonathan's visitation rights must be supervised by a third party. 2 hours later, Donghai Shipping's board held an emergency meeting and voted to suspend Jonathan as CEO pending investigation. 3 hours later, Lydia was taken into police custody. Jonathan called me frantically. His last text read, "Who exactly are you?" I replied, "I've always been me. You just never bothered to see it." The divorce proceedings lasted 3 months. During those months, Donghai Shipping stock continued to fall, and was eventually acquired by a competitor. Jonathan lost the company, and after asset division in the divorce, his remaining shares were minimal. Lydia's embezzlement conviction was upheld with a 3-year sentence. She appealed, but the evidence was conclusive. The final court judgment, divorce granted. I obtained full custody. Jonathan pays monthly child support, and visitation occurs once a month at a designated location. Property division. I received 15% of the former company shares converted to cash, 2 properties, and a settlement sum. Jonathan attempted to apologize in court. "Evelyn, I was wrong. Can we start over?" "For the child." The judge looked at me. I said, "No." The courtroom was silent. "I don't need your apology," I told Jonathan, "because an apology is for your peace of mind, not mine. I also don't need you to start over for the child because the child doesn't need an actor performing paternal love. I only need you to follow the court ruling and stay out of my life. That's everything." The judge struck the gavel. It was over. Stepping out of the courthouse, the sunlight was blinding. My mother waited for me, holding my daughter in her arms. The little one waved her tiny hands from the swaddle. I walked over and took her. She smiled at me, first real, conscious smile. "We're going home," I whispered. "We're going home." I was no longer Mrs. Jonathan, no longer the heiress wife, no longer that mentally unstable woman. I was Evelyn, a mother, a financial modeler, a survivor. And the next step for a survivor is to live well. 3 years later, I sit in my office, looking out over the nighttime skyline of Lujiazui, Shanghai. On my desk is a photo of my daughter, a 3-year-old with 2 little braids, flashing a mouth full of tiny white teeth. My financial modeling company had just completed Series B funding, with a valuation exceeding 100 million yuan. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. I answered. "Evelyn." Jonathan's voice was hoarse and aged. "I'm bankrupt. The house was auctioned. I can't find work. I just want to see my daughter." "According to the court ruling, you may schedule visitation," I said calmly, "but the centers, they always say the times are full." He choked up. "I know it's you blocking me, Evelyn. I was wrong, truly wrong. Just let me see her once." "I'm not blocking you," I said. "The visitation center's schedule is public. If you can't get a slot, it means someone else booked it." Silence. Then he asked, "Will you never forgive me?" I looked out at the glittering city lights. "Jonathan, forgiveness is for those who are truly repentant," I said softly. "And you, You only remembered you have a child because you're down and out. If you were still CEO of Donghai Shipping today, would you even call? He said nothing. I won't stop legal visitation, I said, but I have no obligation to arrange it for you, just as you weren't obligated to sign when I was giving birth. We're even. I hung up and blocked his number. My secretary knocked and entered. President Shen, your Singapore trip next week is scheduled. Shall I book a child's ticket? Of course. I smiled. I promised my daughter we'd ride the Ferris wheel. After work, I went to pick her up from kindergarten. She ran toward me, leaping into my arms. Mom, I drew our family today. There's Mommy, Grandma, and the little kitty. The drawing had 3 figures no fourth. Where's Daddy? The teacher had once cautiously asked her. She blinked her big eyes. Daddy's on the phone. To her, her father was just a vague image on occasional video calls. She neither hated him nor loved him, she just didn't know him. And perhaps this was the best outcome. That night, as I tucked her in, she suddenly asked, Mom, why are you so awesome? Because I have a very, very special treasure. I kissed her forehead. I want her to know that girls can become anything they want. Then when I grow up, I'll run a company too, she declared. Sure, I laughed. Mom will be your advisors. She fell asleep, her tiny hand still clutching my finger. I gently withdrew my hand and turned off the nightlight. Exiting her room, my mother waited in the living room, handing me a warm glass of milk. He called me again today, my mother said, begging me to persuade you. And what did you say? She smiled. I said, my daughter's life is for her to decide. I hugged my mother. This woman, estranged for so many years, had stood unwaveringly by me during my darkest moments. Thank you, Mom. For what? She patted my back. A daughter of the Shen family should never have suffered injustice. Outside, the moon rose, bright, pure, illuminating a brand new day. I no longer look back, because ahead, there is light.